Have you ever noticed how certain people, certain words, or in certain situations can push you to the edge almost instantly? It's as if a switch flips inside you and suddenly calmness feels like a distant memory. Most of us instinctively blame the other person, labeling them as unreasonable, toxic, or unbearable. But the truth, the subtle truth that many overlook is that the storm you experience in those moments begins within you. The first step toward true composure is recognizing your own triggers. Triggers are not random. They are reflections of your inner world, your beliefs, your wounds, your unprocessed emotions, and even your expectations. When someone behaves in a way that irritates or provokes you, it is rarely about them alone. It is often about something unresolved within you that their behavior has touched. That realization can feel uncomfortable at first because it challenges the idea that external circumstances are responsible for our reactions. But understanding this is incredibly liberating. It means that calmness, patience, and clarity are within your control. They are not dictated by someone else's mood, words, or action. Start by observing yourself in moments of irritation or frustration. When a person's comment makes your blood pressure rise or their behavior makes you want to lash out, pause for a moment and reflect. Ask yourself, what exactly is bothering me? What part of this situation resonates with my own fears, insecurities, or unresolved experiences? Perhaps it is not the person's criticism that angers you, but the echo of past experiences where you felt judged or belittled. Maybe it is not their arrogance that irritates you, but the reminder of a time when you doubted your own worth. When you recognize the origin of your emotional reactions, you begin to reclaim control over them. This practice requires honesty. It requires admitting that the intensity of your reaction is linked not only to external circumstances, but to internal patterns that have been quietly influencing your life. Some triggers are obvious, they surface immediately, like anger at unfairness or resentment at condescension. Others are subtle, hidden beneath layers of habit and conditioning, manifesting as impatience, irritability, or even a sense of being drained by someone's presence. The subtle triggers are the ones that can be the hardest to identify because they operate below the level of conscious awareness, quietly influencing your behavior until you learn to notice them. One effective method for recognizing triggers is to journal your emotional responses. Write down moments when you felt irritated, anxious, or reactive. Include as much detail as possible. What was said, how you felt, what memories or thoughts surfaced. Over time, patterns begin to emerge. You start to notice recurring themes, repeated emotional responses, and consistent points of discomfort. This self-awareness is not a form of self-criticism, it is a map guiding you toward deeper understanding of yourself and your reaction. Another key aspect of recognizing triggers is differentiating between perception and reality. Often, our minds exaggerate the meaning of what someone says or does. A sarcastic remark may feel like a personal attack because it resonates with our insecurities, but in reality, it may have little to do with us at all. By identifying the emotional amplification caused by your own internal state, you begin to separate what is truly external from what is an internal reaction. This separation is essential for calmness. Once you see the trigger for what it is, a reflection of your inner world rather than an unchangeable fact of the outside world, the grip of automatic reaction begins to loosen. Recognizing your triggers also means understanding the role of expectation. Often, irritation arises when reality does not match what we expect from others. You expect respect, cooperation, or understanding, and when it is absent, frustration arises. By observing these expectations, you gain insight into your own values, desires, and limitations. You learn which battles are worth engaging and which are reflections of personal ideals that may not align with external reality. This awareness allows you to respond with calm deliberation instead of reactive emotion. The practice of recognizing triggers is ongoing. Each encounter with an unbearable person becomes an opportunity to examine yourself more deeply. Over time, you will notice that your reactions become less immediate, less intense, and less consuming. Awareness creates space, and space creates freedom. The moment you understand the root of your irritation, you gain the power to choose your response, to act with intention rather than reflex. Recognizing your triggers is not about suppressing emotions or pretending to be unaffected. It is about cultivating awareness, understanding, and conscious choice. It is about learning that your emotional landscape is yours to navigate, not theirs to control. Every trigger is a teacher pointing toward a part of yourself that seeks attention, healing, or understanding. By observing your reactions without judgment, by mapping the patterns of your irritation and frustration. You begin to step into a place of calm that is independent of external chaos. Emotional awareness is one of the most powerful tools you can cultivate. When learning to stay calm, especially around people who challenge your patience, it is not about suppressing or controlling your feelings, nor is it about pretending that irritations or frustrations do not exist. Emotional awareness is the art of observing your emotions clearly, understanding them deeply, and using that understanding to guide your actions consciously rather than reactively. Without this awareness, even the simplest interactions can feel like storms, and unbearable people can easily become triggers that destabilize your inner peace. The first step in embracing emotional awareness is recognizing that your emotions are messages, not mandates. Anger, frustration, anxiety, and irritation are signals that something within you has been touched. They point to areas where your values, boundaries, or unmet needs are being challenged. Rather than reacting impulsively or judging yourself for feeling a certain way, allow yourself to notice the emotion without labeling it as good or bad. A simple acknowledgement like, I feel anger rising right now, is enough to begin creating distance between the emotion and your immediate response. One of the most common obstacles to emotional awareness is the habit of identifying entirely with our feelings. Many people feel that if they are angry, they must act on that anger. Or if they are hurt, they must express that hurt immediately. This identification with emotion is what often leads to conflicts escalating and composure breaking down. Emotional awareness teaches you to step back and observe your feelings as if you are watching clouds pass across the sky. The cloud may be dark or turbulent, but the sky, the core of your being, remains unaffected. By creating this inner distance, you regain choice and clarity. Mindfulness is a practical method to cultivate emotional awareness. When a difficult person challenges your patience, pause and take a deep breath. Notice the sensations in your body, the tension in your shoulders, the tightening in your chest, the clenching in your jaw. Pay attention to the thoughts racing through your mind. Label them gently. There is frustration, I notice impatience, or I feel anxious. This simple act of recognition interrupts automatic reactions and allows you to engage from a place of calm observation rather than reactive emotion. Emotional awareness also involves understanding the layers beneath the surface of your immediate feelings. Often, what presents itself as anger is actually fear, hurt, or insecurity. What seems like impatience may be a manifestation of frustration or unmet expectations or unhealed past experiences. By examining the roots of your emotions, you can identify patterns that repeatedly trigger you and understand why certain behaviors affect you so deeply. This introspection transforms emotional challenges into opportunities for self-knowledge and personal growth. Another key aspect of emotional awareness is accepting your emotions without judgment. Many people struggle with self-criticism, telling themselves they shouldn't feel a certain way or that their reactions are wrong. This resistance only intensifies the emotion, making it more difficult to navigate. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It means acknowledging the reality of your internal state. When you accept your emotions as valid, you reduce internal conflict and create the mental space necessary to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Journaling is an effective tool to enhance emotional awareness. After interactions that test your patience, write down your experience, what triggered you, how you felt, what thoughts arose, and how your body responded. Over time, patterns emerge, helping you predict triggers, understand your emotional landscape, and strengthen your ability to respond calmly in future situations. Emotional awareness is not a one-time achievement, but a continuous practice, one that deepens each time you commit to observing yourself honestly and openly. Embracing emotional awareness also strengthens empathy and perspective. When you notice your emotions clearly, you are better able to understand the emotions of others. Difficult people often act out from their own fears, insecurities, or unmet needs. Recognizing your emotional responses allows you to respond to them with patience rather than judgment, seeing their behavior as a reflection of their inner state rather than a personal attack on you. Ultimately, emotional awareness is about reclaiming your power. It shifts you from being a passive recipient of emotional turbulence to an active navigator of your inner life. Every wave of frustration or irritation becomes an opportunity to practice observation, reflection, and conscious response. You begin to see that your peace is not contingent on external circumstances, but is rooted in the clarity with which you understand and manage your own emotions. Detachment is often misunderstood. Many think it means turning away. ignoring reality, or suppressing feelings. But true detachment is not about walking away from life or avoiding challenges. It is about creating an inner space that allows you to remain calm, clear, and composed, even when faced with unbearable people or difficult situations. Detach without disengaging, and you cultivate a state of presence where your mind remains unshaken while your heart remains aware. The first step in learning detachment is understanding the difference between what is within your control and what is not. People's words, actions, and attitudes are ultimately outside your direct influence. You cannot force someone to behave differently, nor can you control the energy they bring into a room. What you can control, however, is your response, the choice to remain grounded, to preserve your inner calm, and to act intentionally rather than react impulsively. Recognizing this distinction is crucial because it shifts your focus from futile attempts to change others to mastering your own emotional terrain. Detachment begins with observation. Imagine a difficult co-worker or a family member whose behavior consistently irritates you. Instead of immediately reacting, step back mentally. Notice the behaviors, the tone, the words, without judging them. See them for what they are, expressions of another person's reality, not a reflection of your worth or value. By observing without immediately internalizing their behavior, you create a buffer, a protective space that prevents external chaos from dictating your inner state. It is also important to maintain empathy while detaching. Detachment does not mean becoming cold or indifferent. You can recognize that someone is struggling or acting out from their own pain, frustration, or insecurity and still maintain distance from the emotional impact of their behavior. Empathy allows you to understand the situation without absorbing it, while detachment ensures you do not lose yourself in the storm. This delicate balance is what enables calmness in the presence of unbearable people. Practicing detachment often involves managing expectations. We become reactive when reality does not align with what we expect from others. Perhaps we expect respect, understanding, or cooperation. And when those expectations are unmet, frustration arises. Detachment teaches us to release rigid expectations and accept people as they are. This does not mean you tolerate abuse or mistreatment. It means that you maintain control over your emotional response rather than giving your power away by reacting out of anger, hurt, or disappointment. Another essential component of detachment is cultivating a mental anchor. This can be a focus on your breath, a mantra, or a visualization that centers your awareness in the present moment. When someone's behavior threatens to pull you into chaos, return to your anchor. Feel the grounding, steady presence within yourself. This practice trains the mind to resist being hijacked by external provocation and allows you to engage from a place of clarity rather than confusion. Detachment also requires recognizing the transient nature of emotional storms. Difficult interactions are temporary. They rise, surge, and eventually subside. By seeing them as passing phenomena rather than permanent conditions, you reduce the intensity of your reaction. The wave may crash, but you are not swept away. You remain the observer, the grounded presence in the middle of turbulence. This perspective transforms challenges into manageable experiences rather than overwhelming crises. It is important to distinguish detachment from disengagement in action. Remaining calm does not mean failing to assert boundaries or avoiding responsibility. You can maintain composure while addressing issues directly, setting limits, or communicating clearly. Detachment simply ensures that you do so from a place of awareness and control rather than fear, frustration, or compulsion. By separating emotional turbulence from intentional action, you respond effectively while protecting your inner equilibrium. Detachment is also about releasing personal identification with the situation. When you feel compelled to react, it is often because you have identified the situation as a threat to your self-image, status, or value. Letting go of this identification allows you to interact without defensiveness or aggression. You see the situation objectively, respond appropriately, and remain intact emotionally. This ability to maintain presence in challenging circumstances is what allows you to navigate even unbearable personalities without losing yourself. Finally, detachment is cultivated through consistent practice. Each encounter with someone difficult is an opportunity to refine the skill. The more you practice observing without absorbing, empathizing without merging, and responding without reacting, the stronger your calmness becomes. Over time, you begin to recognize that your inner peace is not dependent on the behavior of others. You can be fully present, engaged, and compassionate while remaining untouchable by chaos. One of the most powerful distinctions you can make in life is the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is immediate, impulsive, and often driven by emotion. It is fueled by instinct, habit, and unresolved internal patterns. Response, on the other hand, is deliberate, conscious, and rooted in awareness. It allows you to act with clarity, even in the presence of unbearable people who might otherwise provoke you into chaos. Understanding this difference is key to preserving your inner calm and transforming difficult interactions into opportunities for mastery. Reacting is often a product of conditioning. From a young age, many of us learn to respond to conflict with anger, defensiveness, or avoidance. When someone challenges us or behaves in a way that frustrates us, the body and mind default to these learned patterns. Heart rate rises, thoughts spiral, and words can fly before reason has a chance to intervene. In these moments, we feel controlled by external circumstances rather than by our own volition. This is why reacting tends to escalate conflict and drain our energy. It hands our power over to the situation or the other person. Responding, however, begins with a pause. That pause might be brief, a single breath, or it might be a few seconds of observation, but it creates a critical space between stimulus and action. In that space, awareness emerges. You notice your emotional state, your bodily sensations, and the thoughts running through your mind. You recognize the impulse to lash out, argue, or retreat, and you choose instead a course of action that aligns with your values and intentions. That choice is the essence of response. It is deliberate, conscious, and rooted in presence. A key aspect of responding is listening not just to the words being spoken, but to the underlying energy, intentions, and emotion. When someone unbearable challenges you, it is easy to focus solely on their words, immediately constructing a mental defense. But true response involves attentive observation. What are they really communicating? What fears, needs, or insecurities might be driving their behavior? By listening fully before reacting, you equip yourself to respond in a way that is both effective and composed, rather than reactive and emotionally entangled. Language is central to responding. When we react, words are often sharp, accusatory, or defensive. Responses, in contrast, are measured, deliberate, and purposeful. A pause allows you to select words that reflect understanding, clarity, and calm authority. For example, instead of snapping in frustration, you might say, I hear what you're saying, and I need a moment to process that, or let's discuss this calmly and find a solution. Even simple statements that acknowledge your own boundaries or emotions without aggression transform interactions from battles into conversations. Responding also requires managing your inner dialogue. Many of our reactive impulses are fueled by stories we tell ourselves about the other person or the situation. They're trying to make me look bad, or they always do this to me, can intensify emotional reaction. Recognizing these narratives and questioning their accuracy creates a mental space in which response can arise. You realize that you have a choice. You can engage from clarity or surrender to the narrative that fuels frustration. That choice is at the heart of emotional intelligence and conscious living. Another critical aspect of responding is the alignment of action with intention. Reaction often focuses on immediate gratification, venting anger, proving a point, or seeking validation. Response prioritizes long-term outcomes and the preservation of peace, dignity, and self-respect. Even in heated situations, a conscious response allows you to maintain your composure, protect your energy, and communicate effectively. It transforms confrontation into a platform for influence rather than a source of destruction. Practicing response over reaction requires repeated conscious effort. In moments of tension, remind yourself, pause, breathe, observe, choose. These 4 simple steps create the rhythm of conscious action. Over time, the habit of response strengthens and reaction weakens. The nervous system itself begins to recalibrate, associating stressful situations with calm observation rather than panic or impulsive anger. This physiological shift reinforces the psychological skill, making conscious response increasingly effortless. It is also helpful to visualize difficult interactions in advance. Anticipate situations where you might be triggered and mentally rehearse responding calmly. Imagine the words you might say, the tone you might adopt, and the presence you want to embody. Mental rehearsal prepares the mind to act intentionally under pressure, transforming potentially volatile encounters into opportunities for composed engagement. Ultimately, Responding rather than reacting is about reclaiming mastery over your inner world. It allows you to navigate the chaos of unbearable people without being swept away. Each choice to pause, observe, and act with awareness strengthens the capacity for patience, clarity, and resilience. It empowers you to remain grounded, communicate effectively, and preserve your peace. Circumstances that once provoked frustration and turmoil, every encounter with someone difficult, challenging, or unbearable carries a hidden opportunity, a mirror reflecting aspects of ourselves that remain unseen, unacknowledged, or underdeveloped. This is the essence of shadow work, the practice of exploring the parts of yourself that you usually avoid, suppress, or deny. Shadow work is not about blame, shame, or criticism. It is about awareness, integration, and transformation. By using the presence of difficult people as a mirror, you can uncover patterns, heal wounds, cultivate inner strength that allows you to remain calm even in the most trying interaction. The shadow is composed of the aspects of ourselves that we deem unacceptable or unworthy: anger, jealousy, insecurity, fear, and the impulses we try to hide from others, and sometimes even from ourselves. When someone triggers you, it is often because they have touched one of these hidden aspects. Perhaps their arrogance mirrors your own suppressed desire for recognition, or their criticism awakens a wound from past experiences of rejection. By observing your reactions to these triggers, you gain access to parts of your inner world that are waiting for attention. The first step in using shadow work for growth is self-reflection. When someone provokes you, ask yourself, why does this behavior affect me so strongly? What am I avoiding or denying in myself that is surfacing in this interaction? These questions shift the focus from external blame to internal exploration. Rather than seeing the other person as the source of disturbance, you see the interaction as a doorway to understanding yourself more deeply. This perspective transforms irritation into insight, frustration into awareness, and conflict into a learning experience. Shadow work also involves acknowledging and accepting your uncomfortable feelings without judgment. When a difficult person triggers anger, resentment, or fear, resist the impulse to suppress or rationalize those emotions. Instead, sit with them, explore them. Ask yourself what underlying belief, memory, or fear is connected to this reaction. Perhaps anger arises because you feel powerless, resentment because your boundaries have been ignored, or fear because past experiences have left you vulnerable. Each emotion is a signpost pointing to a part of your psyche that seeks recognition, healing, and integration. Integration is the next step. Recognizing your shadow is only the beginning. True growth comes from embracing it as a part of yourself rather than rejecting or denying it. This does not mean acting destructively on impulses, but rather understanding them, learning from them, and transforming them into conscious, constructive energy. For example, recognizing suppressed anger can empower you to assert boundaries effectively, while acknowledging insecurity can motivate self-compassion and confidence. By integrating shadow aspects, you convert triggers into tools for personal development and resilience. Shadow work also requires honesty and courage. It is easy to rationalize, blame, or avoid uncomfortable truths about yourself. True growth demands facing the parts of yourself that you have hidden or disowned. Difficult people often bring these hidden parts to the surface, intentionally or unintentionally, offering a mirror that shows not just who they are, but who you are beneath the surface. This confrontation with your own shadow can feel uncomfortable, even painful, but it is also profoundly liberating. Another essential aspect of shadow work is understanding projection. Often, the traits we dislike in others are reflections of our own suppressed qualities. When someone acts in a way that frustrates or angers us, it is worth considering whether this behavior mirrors something within us that we have yet to acknowledge. Recognizing projection allows you to take responsibility for your own inner world rather than blaming external circumstances. This shift from blame to self-awareness is a cornerstone of emotional mastery and calmness. Shadow work is also about cultivating compassion both for yourself and for others. When you understand that difficult behaviors often stem from unresolved shadows in everyone, including yourself, interactions with challenging people become less about conflict and more about empathy. You begin to see them as mirrors reflecting not only your own shadow, but also the shared human struggle with unacknowledged aspects of the psyche. This awareness does not excuse harmful behavior, but allows you to navigate interactions without being consumed by reactive emotions. Ultimately, using shadow work for growth transforms unbearable interactions into opportunities for self-mastery. Each trigger, each challenge, and each conflict becomes a teacher, guiding you toward deeper awareness, integration, and resilience. By examining your reactions, understanding your shadow, and consciously choosing to grow through discomfort, you cultivate an inner strength that remains unshaken, even in the presence of those who once provoked chaos. Shadow work teaches you that calmness is not merely the absence of disturbance, it is the conscious cultivation of presence, awareness, and wisdom in every situation.